Motive waves. The basic 5-wave structure is called the motive wave. In a rising market, it will consist of 3 upward movements and 2 downward movements. It moves in the same direction of the trend of 1 higher degree and will subdivide into 5 waves. There are 2 types of motive waves, impulsive and diagonal. The impulse wave is one in which we have already touched on. It is the most common motive wave and the easiest to identify. Like all motive waves, it consists of 5 subwaves. Wave 1, 3 and 5 move in the direction of the trend, whilst wave 2 and 4 are retracements against the predominant direction of the trend. Waves 1, 3 and 5 are themselves motive. We can define the impulsive wave by using the 3 unbreakable rules of Elliott wave analysis we have learnt about so far. Remember, if any of these rules are broken, then the pattern is not an impulsive wave and needs recalculation. Rule 1. Wave 2 cannot retrace more than 100% of wave 1. Rule 2. Wave 3 can never be the shortest of the 3 motive waves. Rule 3. Wave 4 can never overlap wave 1. The majority of impulse waves will contain what is called an extension. This means either wave 1, 3 or 5 will exhibit an elongated impulse with exaggerated subdivisions. Although the extension can appear in wave 1, 3 or 5, wave 3 extensions are most common as they are typically the strongest and longest of the 3 waves. Extensions can also occur within extensions. Looking at this pattern, we can see how the extension occurs within the extension of wave 3. It is a 3rd wave extension of a 3rd wave extension, totaling 13 waves. Extensions typically occur in only one of the waves. This provides us with a useful guide to the expected lengths of any future waves. There are times when the 5th wave may end in what is known as a truncated wave 5. Also known as a failure, the impulsive wave weakens and fails to exceed the endpoint of wave 3. It still consists of 5 subwaves and often occurs after a strong 3rd wave. It is typically short and usually signals a reversal pattern. The other type of motive wave is the less common diagonal. Like all motive waves, it consists of 5 waves but is not considered impulsive. It moves in the direction of the trend, but unlike the strong impulse wave, the diagonal moves weakly with convergent channels. Unlike impulse waves, which say wave 4 can never overlap wave 1, diagonals on the other hand always consist of a wave 4 that overlaps and moves into the price territory of wave 1. An ending diagonal is a special type of wave that occurs in wave 5 or wave C and can often be seen when the preceding move of the trend has gone too far and too fast. They take the shape of a wedge with a convergent channel. Each subway, including waves 1, 3 and 5, subdivides into 3 waves, creating the internal sequence 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Wave 4 will always overlap wave 1 and they typically occur at termination points of larger patterns indicating a change in direction. A leading diagonal occurs in wave 1 or wave A with the internal sequence of 5, 3, 5, 3, 5. The 5 subwaves are comprised of motive and corrective patterns as opposed to all corrective waves seen in the ending diagonal. Similarly to the ending diagonal, wave 4 always overlaps wave 1 and takes the shape of a wedge with a convergent channel. Leading diagonals usually precedes a deep correction. The 5, 3, 5, 3, 5 sequence of the leading diagonal indicates a continuation of the trend, whereas the ending diagonal pattern sequence of 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 indicates a termination of the trend. Now that we have spoke about the types of motive waves, let's look at the rules and guidelines that apply to each one. Don't worry if you don't understand some of the corrective pattern terms, we'll be learning about them in the next module. Impulse rules. Wave 1 must not be an impulse or leading diagonal. Wave 2 cannot retrace more than 100% of wave 1. Wave 3 can never be the shortest wave. Wave 3 must be an impulse. Wave 4 is a corrective pattern and cannot be an impulse. Wave 4 can never overlap wave 1. Wave 5 must be an impulse or ending diagonal. Impulse waves subdivide into 5 waves. Waves 1, 3 and 5 can never all be extended. Impulse guidelines. Wave 1, 3 or 5 usually extend. Wave 1 is the least commonly extended wave. Usually either wave 3 or 5 extend. Wave 2 is usually a zigzag or zigzag combination. Wave 3 is usually the steepest and longest wave. Wave 4 is usually a flat, triangle or flat combination. Wave 4 typically ends within the price territory of subwave 4 of wave 3. Wave 4 is usually a different corrective pattern than wave 2. Sometimes wave 5 does not move beyond wave 3 and fails to make a new high, resulting in a truncation. Wave 5 often ends at the top of a channel. Diagonal rules. A diagonal always subdivides into 5 waves. Wave 2 cannot retrace more than 100% of wave 1. Wave 3 moves beyond the end of wave 1. Wave 4 always moves into the price territory of wave 1. Wave 4 never moves beyond the end of wave 2. In a contracting diagonal, wave 5 is shorter than wave 3, wave 3 than wave 1, and wave 4 than wave 2. In an expanding diagonal, wave 5 is longer than wave 3, wave 3 than wave 1, and wave 4 than wave 2. Diagonal guidelines. Wave 5 usually ends beyond the end of wave 3, but it can fail to make a new high, resulting in a truncation. In a contracting diagonal, wave 5 usually ends at or slightly beyond the trend line which connects the end of waves 1 and 3. In an expanding diagonal, wave 5 usually ends slightly before the trend line that connects the ends of wave 1 and 3. Leading diagonal rules. A leading diagonal always appears in wave 1 of an impulse or wave A of a zigzag. Waves 2 and 4 always subdivides into zigzags. Wave 5 ends beyond the end of wave 3. Leading diagonal guidelines. Waves 1, 3 and 5 usually subdivide into zigzags, but sometimes appear to be impulsive. Wave 3 is usually extended if wave 1 is a leading diagonal. Ending diagonal rules. An ending diagonal always appears in wave 5 of an impulse or wave C of a zigzag or flat. All waves subdivide into zigzags. Ending diagonal guidelines. Wave 5 usually ends beyond the end of wave 3. If wave 5 is an ending diagonal, wave 3 is usually extended. From the module of mathematical applications, we touched on the fact that we can use Fibonacci numbers to predict the end of retracements and extensions. Let's look at how we can use Fibonacci to predict targets. Wave 1 is used to project the end of wave 3. Wave 3 is a multiple of wave 1 and the targets are as follows. Either 1 times the length of wave 1, 1.618 times the length of wave 1, 2.618 times the length of wave 1, or 4.236 times the length of wave 1. Wave 5 is a multiple of wave 1, or the difference between the start of wave 1 and the end of wave 3. We know that if wave 3 is extended, it usually means wave 5 will not be an extension. Wave 5 targets, if wave 3 are extended, are as follows. Either 1 times the length of wave 1, 0.618 times the length of wave 1, 1.618 times the length of wave 1, or 0.618 times the length of wave 1 to wave 3. When wave 5 is extended, it becomes a multiple of wave 1, or the difference between the start of wave 1 and the end of wave 3. The targets will be either 1 times the price difference between the start of wave 1 to the end of wave 3, or 1.618 times the price difference between the start of wave 1 to the end of wave 3. Elliot noted that a parallel trendline channel typically marks the upper and lower boundaries of an impulse wave. As soon as waves 1, 2 and 3 are complete, an initial channel can be drawn. The technique requires trend lines to be drawn connecting waves. Once wave 3 ends, the first step is to draw a trend line connecting the ends of waves 1 and 3, and then another trend line parallel connecting the end of wave 2. The construction allows the trader to estimate the end of wave 4. When wave 4 completes, if it is not touching the parallel trend line or moves beyond it, a new trend line must be drawn connecting the ends of waves 2 and 4. Using this lower trend line, new parallel trend lines must be drawn from the end of wave 1 and the end of wave 3. Finally, draw a trend line halfway between the two upper parallel trend lines. Wave 5 will typically fall somewhere between the three trend lines.